We need to talk about this photo. This photo was discovered by a single mother who recently bought a new phone. She came home, placed her phone on the table, and started watching TV. But soon after that, her son found the phone and asked to play with it. She agreed, thinking nothing unusual was gonna happen. But around 11 p.m. that same night, the mother decided it was time to go to bed. Strangely though, she found her son already in bed, which was very unusual for him. Normally, he'd want to stay up a lot longer. That's when she noticed her new phone was still in her son's hands. So she took it from him and unlocked the phone, at first only seeing some minor changes. He changed the background on her phone and took a few pictures around the house, nothing too alarming. But since the photos seemed random, she started deleting them, until she saw something that shocked her. This was the last photo on her camera roll, showing her son sleeping, but the photo was taken by someone else above him. Follow for more stories.
This girl went missing, and when they found her, she was not normal.
There was a young girl named Mia who went missing. The whole town was searching and her parents were doing everything to find her. People from other towns and states were even coming over to help. But on the 13th day of the search, Mia's parents were with a couple people searching some parts of the woods when they suddenly came across a cave. They then went inside and saw Mia sitting there smiling. Her parents then smiled in joy and couldn't believe they found her. But as they got closer, they noticed her eyes were completely white and her mouth and hands were covered in blood.
Most unusual deaths in human history. Anthony Hensley was kayaking across a pond in Illinois when he accidentally got too close to a swan's nest. While trying to row away, he fell off his kayak and the swan drowned him underwater. A 14-year-old boy from Texas was playing hide-and-go-seek at 3 in the morning. While trying to run around, he couldn't see all that well and ran face-first into a bull statue. Wanting to reap the benefits of cold exposure, Chelsea Ackee Salvation decided to try out cryotherapy. However, during her session, the machine was set incorrectly, causing all oxygen to be eliminated inside the chamber, suffocating her to death. King Henry I died after eating too many lampreys, a type of jawless fish. In 2013, the corpse of 17-year-old Kendrick Johnson was found rolled up in a gym mat at his high school. Police originally concluded that he had tried to grab his shoe and became trapped, but in 2021, the case was reopened and is believed to be a murder.
This is why you should lock your door as soon as you get home.
The parents of Joseph Augustus Zarelli, the young boy who was only known as the Boy in the Box for 65 years, have been identified. If you don't know the story of the Boy in the Box, I covered it in my Cold Cases Solved playlist or on episode 165 of my podcast, Inhuman. So Augustus Gus Zarelli and Mary Elizabeth Betsy Abel are believed to be the parents of Joseph Augustus Zarelli. Betsy would have been 21 years old when Joseph was born on January 13th, 1953. Relatives of Betsy submitted DNA for genealogical research, allowing Identifiers International to build out her family tree, and investigators contacted the 5 Abel sisters, including Betsy, asking about who was pregnant when they were trying to identify Joseph's mother. The family said that the Abel family only learned that the investigation was about the Boy in the Box 48 hours before the press conference, and they were stunned as they remembered hearing about the cold case when he was first found. Betsy's family say that she loved skating and dancing, and she swooned over Italian boys, and she loved Frank Sinatra and would wear out the needle on his records at her home in Philadelphia. She graduated high school in North Philadelphia in 1949. She had a daughter born in 1950 who she put up for adoption, and family members say she may have put Joseph up for adoption after his birth in 1953. Betsy worked as a cashier at the Goldman Theater and eventually married the manager of the theater, John Plunkett, and they had 4 children together, and Betsy passed away in 1991 after battling lung cancer. Family members of Betsy have said that they have no reason to believe that she was responsible for Joseph's death. The relative of Betsy that spoke a lot in this article said, "Betsy, no way in the world. There was no cruelty, no meanness or cruelty that swelled within her heart and soul." Gus, the father, was a concrete and stoneman, a hard worker in a proud family of Italian immigrants in West Philadelphia, and he went on to have 4 children. The attorney representing Gus and his children said each of his children is extraordinarily sympathetic to the death of this young boy and horrified by the events that are being discussed. However, until recently, they had never heard of any of this. They have never been shown anything that links their father or any member of their family to this. According to the attorney, the Zarelli family is investigating if there is any merit to Gus being the father, as they've been given very little information from the police. They've said that there's no evidence that Gus had any knowledge of this child. Gus Zarelli passed away in 2014 at the age of 87. At this time, the death of Joseph Augustus Zarelli remains an active homicide investigation, and they are continuing to try to find who did this to this young boy.
This is the longest true horrifying story episode. This episode is worth the time. The story took place in Nador, Morocco in the year 2015. The story was submitted by Ilyas. Back in 2015, Ilyas was an 18-year-old Moroccan Muslim that lived in Norway. One night, Ilyas was back in Morocco visiting family, and he stayed up late watching a movie at home till 3 in the morning. The living room was very warm, so he got up to open the window for fresh air. As he was at the window, being at the 4th floor in that building, he looks down, and the street was dark and empty, but there was one man wearing black from head to toe with a hood covering his face. He wasn't sure why that man was outside at that time. He looked away, but then peeked one last time out of curiosity. When he looked at him again, the man had his hands on a building's wall. He was strangely just feeling the wall, and out of nowhere, the man vanishes through that wall. He rubbed his eyes in disbelief after what he just witnessed. Ilyas swears that there was no door in that spot. It was just physically impossible. He forgets about this after a while and then flies back to Norway. 6 months later, in Norway, Ilyas experiences his first ever sleep paralysis, which in Islam is known as Jathum. He vividly remembers having a conversation with a dark figure, and his mom also witnessed him speak in his sleep. He woke up after the paralysis with swollen feet and rashes all over his body. They rushed to the ER, and none of the doctors could diagnose what caused his body to react that way. He was finally discharged after treatment, but after that day, Ilyas was never the same person. He always acted differently. He was antisocial. He was distant from people. And his mom always told him that he needed ruqya. A few months later, they fly back to Morocco for the next holiday season. He was always against his mother's ruqya idea. However, he decided to fight his thoughts and do it. He had a cousin that was also suffering, and she visited Iraqi in Morocco quite regularly. So they went together with both of their moms. When they reached, they sat down and waited for their session. Ilyas could hear the Raqi in the other room, and he felt extremely uneasy and started to sweat. The Quran recitation, the ruqya, the sounds, made him not even want to look at that direction. He was angry. He went outside for a moment to gain back his senses until their turn finally reached. The Raqi called them in and started. Ilyas's cousin immediately started reacting horribly when the Quran started. She was screaming so loud. Ilyas started losing senses throughout his entire body. He was sweating, he was unable to move, and he was shouting from fear. He does pray, and he does read Quran, but he was so confused as to why he was screaming. He felt like he was being tortured. The slightest pinch from the Raqi felt like it was a knife stab. It was very powerful. And this is where he felt a jinn's presence inside of him. The following night was the most horrific night for Ilyas. For a whole week, the man was not able to sleep alone, and he would get mentally abused by these demons haunting him. Weeks go by. Ilyas started getting demonic thoughts of harming his own family. He hated everyone. When he would look at his own sister, her face would seem distorted to him. He knows these beings are playing with his head. His whole life turned upside down. He would regularly think of harming his own family, but luckily, he never did. A few months later, Ilyas was back in Norway and life was back to normal. He was relieved that he was in a good state of mind and that the horror was over. At the time, he worked at a local grocery store. After a Christmas celebration at work, which he did not participate in, it was late at night. He was walking one of his colleagues back home from work. She was a young woman and she was scared to walk alone. After they reached outside her place, she asked him, "Where's that other girl that was with us?" "What girl?" Ilyas asked. "There was no one there. It was just you and I." She swore that there was another woman with black hair, pale skin, standing next to him the whole time, staring at Ilyas's colleague with anger. Even though this entity gave Ilyas a break, this jinn was still around, haunting everyone that has intentions towards Ilyas.
Julio Ramirez was enjoying a night out in Hell's Kitchen back in April, and then hours later,
him and his friends decided to go to this place called Hell's Kitchen. A lot of people go here to have fun, have a good time. It's a place located in New York. So this one particular night at around 7 p.m., he goes to this place with his friend Carlos. They will bar hop and go to different places, but then Julio takes this one specific picture. Then all of a sudden, him and his friend separated. Julio sends Carlos a text message, "Where you at?" Carlos said, "I'm inside." Julio said, "I'm outside." Julio told him, "Come out." I don't know around this time if Carlos wasn't even paying attention to his phone. They was trying to look for each other but could not find each other. But an hour later, Carlos said, "I'm home." "Where you at?" Carlos tell him, "Come to my place," but never receives a response back from Julio. Later that morning, still no reply. It's been a little while now. Carlos sent another message saying, "What happened? I thought we left together." He texted, "I woke up and I was like, Julio," and you wasn't even there. But when Carlos looked at his phone, he seen that Julio seen his message, but he never replied. Things get a little strange at this very moment. Carlos decided to look back at the messages and he realized around 3 a.m. Julio stopped sharing his location. Then another one of his friends, he also stopped sharing his location with. He also stopped replying to her as well. Then that's when the messages went from blue to green, meaning that his phone is off, it probably have died.
Have you ever heard of Purple Ackee? If you're from northwest England like me, then you'll have heard many stories about him from your mates. I won't attempt to pronounce his full name, and I'll leave it to the comments to explain why he's called Purple Ackee. The story goes that he walks around Merseyside searching for men to discuss weight training with. He then asks to touch their muscles and asks them to squat him. In 2001 he was convicted of threatening behaviour and jailed for 30 months. After being charged with 50 counts of indecent assault against 14 teenage boys between 1995 and 2000. In 2006 he was ordered by a judge not to feel people's muscles or to ask them to do squats. He was also banned from entering St Helens, Warrington and Widnes without the permission of the Chief Constable of Merseyside or Cheshire. In 2016 BBC Three released a documentary called The Man Who Squeezes Muscles, searching for Purple Ackee. I think I'm safe.
creepy video on YouTube of this man. Look at this video.
We got kind of tired of the mall and I brought her back to my place. And I know she hates cameras, Walter, but I'm gonna show you around anyways. You ready?
Then goes to his basement, opens the door, and reveals a girl screaming. She's locked up. And you have to realize, when people was looking at this video, they didn't automatically expect Kayla. They forgot about her in a way because it's been years. But when certain people seen this video in the town saying it's Kayla.
You thought this was your daughter?
I sincerely, honestly thought that was my daughter in that video.
So the mom is looking at this video. She's trying to really, because it's her daughter. She knows her daughter. And she's saying that, this is possibly highly my daughter. All right, so now as I'm watching this video, I see this YouTube channel and he gave like a clue in his video when this guy was talking. As you can see, the guy's talking in the video and there's like this purse in a Ziploc bag. And they believe that this is Kayla Berg's book bag, purse. Not only that, a lot of people is believing that who is this guy and what is he doing with Kayla? And they do investigations